The spiral of violence continues in Colombia. 4 our indigenous were killed in the 58th massacre so far in 2022. Kosovo authorities postponed for a month the application of the ban on Serbian documents and license plates in its territory. The United Nations organization warned that humanity is on the brink of a nuclear catastrophe and is currently facing a highly dangerous level of danger at the conference on the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The spiral of violence continues in Colombia. 4 Iowa indigenous were killed in the 58th massacre so far this year, 2022. At around 11:30 a.m. local time on Sunday, a group of armed men burst into a commercial establishment located in Barbacoas municipality, department of Nariño, killing 4 Iowa indigenous people and injuring 2 others. According to the Institute for Development and Peace Studies, this will be the 58th massacre so far this year, 2022. In another similar incident, also in Nariño, but in the municipality of Tumaco, the indigenous leader Maria Veronica Pai Cabeza, who was 6 months pregnant and a member of the P1B Palangala reservation of the Agua community, was murdered. In Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro received the United Nations Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Martin Griffiths. Griffiths arrived in the country last Sunday on a working visit in order to collaborate with the national government and other partners in addressing the most pressing social needs. The head of the UN Humanitarian Services also visited the chief executive to learn firsthand about the implementation of policies of comprehensive care for the most vulnerable population, in addition to strengthening technical assistance between the South American nation and the multilateral agency. Bolivia's President Luis Arce received the Vice President-elect of Colombia, Francia Márquez, at the Casa Grande del Pueblo headquarters of the nation's government. The President of Bolivia shared that the country embraces Francia Márquez with affection and friendship, while showing that the winds from the south are blowing strongly and strengthening the great continent homeland. Márquez is expected to discuss with Luis Arce the government program to be developed by the administration of Colombia's President-elect Gustavo Petro and the challenges ahead. Prior to his meeting with the President of Bolivia, Francia Márquez, together with the Bolivian Vice President David Choquehuanca, an indigenous representative paid tribute to the Pachamama in the Murillo Square in the city of La Paz. Referring to Márquez's visit, former President Evo Morales expressed through his Twitter account, "Welcome to Bolivia's sister Vice President of Colombia, Francia Márquez, the people, the poor, the vilified, and the historically marginalized who promoted here a new country with the hope of equality and racial justice. We salute you as a worthy leader of this cause." Teachers' unions in Panama discussed with basis the agreements reached on education at the single dialogue table with a view to ending the sector strike. The teachers reportedly agree with the Panamanian Ministry of Education the end of the strike and a gradual increase of 6% of the gross domestic product by the end of 2024. The Association of Educators of Veragüense stated that the decision could guarantee the return to classes as from Tuesday, August 2nd, with a restructured school year to conclude in December, and explained that the document must establish that no reprisals will be taken against teachers, directors, supervisors, and other educational personnel that participated in the strike. The government of Argentina is undergoing an economic restructuring with the announcement of new measures and new ministerial appointees. Through Twitter, former Congress Whip Sergio Massa said that he has appointed the new Secretary of Finance and the Undersecretary of Budget in charge of taxes as part of the restructuring measures announced. Massa said that this week he will be announcing the names of those chosen to be part of his team at the Department of National Economy. This comes after President Alberto Fernandez's last Thursday announcement of the merger of the Ministries of Economy, Productive Development, Agriculture, Livestock, and Fishing, as well as the appointment of Sergio Massa as the new Economy Minister in order to provide an effective response to the current inflation crisis in the country. The Anglophone Caribbean countries celebrate Monday the Emancipation Day, which marks the 188th anniversary of the abolition of slavery. The event also marks the abolition of apprenticeship in 1838, a system which forced formerly enslaved people to continue to work uncompensated for their former masters. British slave traders kidnapped an estimated 3.1 million people along the west coast of Africa, trafficked them across the Atlantic Ocean, and subjected them to forced labor and torture on the colonial plantations that enriched the British Crown. British colonial legislation codified racial differences between the white planter class and enslaved Africans and regulated slaves' behavior through harsh slave codes. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Kosovo authorities decided to postpone for a month the application of the ban on Serbian documents and license plates in its territory after the tensions left on Sunday night at two border points between the two countries. According to the communique issued by the government of Prime Minister Albin Kurti, this decision conditions the removal of the barricades set up by the local Serbs in protest against the measure. They also point out that the decision was taken after a meeting with the U.S. ambassador to Kosovo, Jeffrey Havanir. On his part, the Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić is working to calm the situation and stressed the request to international representatives to help Kosovo to abandon these measures. Serbs began dismantling roadblocks in the north of the self-proclaimed Republic of Kosovo after its authorities postponed for a month a ban on Serbian identity cards and license plates. Protests broke out in northern Kosovo on Sunday night within hours of the measure coming into force. Authorities justified the measure by saying it is symmetrical to the restrictions in Serbia. Belgrade, which does not acknowledge Kosovo as an independent state, is forcing the change of Kosovar license plates and issuing temporary identity cards to holders of paper issued in the self-proclaimed republic. Kosovo, populated mostly by Albanians, proclaimed unilateral independence in 2008 and is acknowledged by the US, Canada, and most European Union members countries, but not by Serbia, Russia, China, Spain, Greece, Iran, among others. The head of the Serbian Government Office for Kosovo and Metohija, Peter Petković, said Monday that Serbia was ready to take part in European Union facilitated dialogues with Kosovo. Petković added that a Serbian delegation could be ready to travel to Brussels for talks even with a day's notice. His comments come after Kosovo's authorities early Monday moved to ease mounting ethnic tensions in the country by delaying a controversial order on vehicle license plates and identity cards. European Commission spokesman Peter Stano said the EU was following developments very closely and with concern, and that both parties had been invited to Brussels to sit down and talk in the framework of the EU-facilitated dialogue. China's Army's Eastern Theater Command reported on Monday that its troops are on high alert in the face of rising tensions with the United States over Taiwan. The military body stressed that the forces will confront any invader and march to victory while conducting joint operations. The Asian Command also showed a video displaying the deployment of missiles, fighters, and a large number of very sophisticated armaments. Beijing Foreign Ministry said that it was keeping a close eye on the itinerary of U.S. legislator Nancy Pelosi after reiterating its rejection of the official's visit to Taiwan. Meanwhile, the People's Liberation Army announced that it began this Monday a round of exercises in the Yellow Sea, which will last 14 days and which implies a ban in the Southern Sea after the United States announced that it would double operations in the territory. Foreign Ministry spokesman Xiao Lijian told a press conference in Beijing on Monday that the One China principle underpins peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait and that the United States should stop applying double standards on the Taiwan issue.
The One China principle is what underpins peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. It is the United States that has constantly distorted and hollowed out the One China policy and made irresponsible remarks on the Taiwan question, creating tensions across the strait. The U.S. side lately has as it speaks on the Taiwan question and must not play the double standard game.
U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's ongoing Asia tour has shown the U.S. continuing desire for global hegemony and seeking competition and confrontation with China by seriously infringing upon China's national interests, said a Chinese expert on Monday.
To the statement released by the Pelosi's office, during her visit, Nancy Pelosi will stress the so-called U.S. commitment to U.S. allies and friends in this region. They will discuss how to promote common interests and values, including human rights and democracy. This shows her visit is aimed at promoting U.S. interests in the region, especially aiming at getting support from regional countries for the so-called Indo-Pacific strategy, which is aimed at strengthening U.S. global hegemony and its competition with China. So she will provoke distrust among the region countries.
The Ukrainian and Russian delegations monitored the first shipment of Ukrainian grain as it leaves the port of Odessa under a deal aimed at relieving a global food crisis. The vessel carrying 26,000 tons of corn left the port of Odessa on Monday under a landmark deal to lift Moscow's naval blockade in the Black Sea. The 5-month hold of deliveries from war-torn Ukraine, one of the world's biggest grain exporters, has contributed to soaring food prices, hitting the world's poorest nations especially hard. Officials said the ransoning cargo ship was making its way through a specially clear corridor in the mining-infested waters of the Black Sea. Guterres said he hoped it would be the first of many commercial ships to depart from Ukraine and that this will bring much-needed stability and relief to global food security, especially in the most fragile humanitarian context. We have more news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back From the South. The United Nations Organization opens the 10th Review Conference to the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. During the opening speech to the event, the Secretary General of the International Organization, Antonio Guterres, affirmed the world is not out of nuclear danger and called on the leaders of the nations to take into account the serious moment they are facing. Guterres also pointed out that competition is overtaking cooperation and that, in his opinion, mistrust has replaced dialogue. The UN Secretary General assured that the world is only one misunderstanding or miscalculation away from nuclear war and warned that a nuclear non-proliferation treaty is more necessary than ever.
We need the treaty of non-proliferation of nuclear weapons as much as ever. And that is why this review conference is so important. It's an opportunity to hammer out the measures that will help avoid certain disaster and to put humanity on a new path towards a world free of nuclear weapons. It is also a chance to strengthen this treaty and make it fit for the warring world around us.
In Palestine, at least 42 people were detained following an incursion by Israeli forces in multiple areas of the occupied West Bank. According to local media, the military raided camps, villages, towns, and several neighborhoods in the West Bank on Monday morning. Palestinian sources said most of the arrests were focused on Hebron Governorate, where occupation forces arrested more than 25 youth and 39 houses were raided as part of their military offensive in Etzion and Yehuda areas. Dozens of Palestinians protested in rejection of hostile actions and what they considered to be human rights violations. The coalition supporting the president of Senegal claims victory in the Senegalese legislative elections. Some 7 million Senegalese were eligible to vote in the election, which passed without any major incidents. Aminata Touré, head of the presidential coalition's list and former prime minister, claims to have won the vote in 30 of Senegal's 43 departments, a success contested by the opposition, who are describing it as a prefabricated majority. Touré, however, acknowledged her coalition had been defeated in the capital Dakar in Sunday's vote. The opposition was swift in rejecting Touré's claims. The single round of voting will decide the 165 seats of the single-chamber parliament currently controlled by the president's supporters for the next 5 years. Kenyan presidential candidate William Ruto campaigns in the Kirin-Yaga county of the Mount Kenya region ahead of elections on August 9th. The helicopter lands in the middle of rice fields, heralding the arrival of presidential candidate Ruto and his 6 votes for the densely populated, politically influential heartland of Mount Kenya. This is the sacred land of the Kikuyu, the largest ethnic group in the country. In a country traditionally marked by voting patterns tied to tribal identity, Mount Kenya has largely voted for Uhuru Kenyatta in the last 2 presidential elections. At least 6 people were killed and dozens injured on Monday when a fuel truck exploded in southwestern Libya. The explosion occurred when a crowd flocked around the tanker as it headed to resupply a petrol station in the Bent Bayah district. A stampede took place, followed by a massive explosion that set several cars on fire. More than 50 wounded were admitted to Seba Hospital, and many of the wounded were in a critical state. Interim Prime Minister Abdullah Hamid Deiba tweeted that his government was closely following the incident. 2 protesters were shot dead by the South African police on Monday during a demonstration against rising utility prices. The protest took place in the township of Tembisa in the east of the South African economic capital, Johannesburg, where angry residents, particularly over electricity prices, blocked roads with burning tires and set fire to a public building. A police spokeswoman said there were 2 fatal injuries in the protest action. A wave of protests is swelling in South Africa, the most developed economy on the African continent, but plagued by unemployment and crime. The summer of 2021 saw a wave of riots and large-scale looting unprecedented in 30 years, which left 350 dead. TeleSUR English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on screen are in place since July 1st. Quite soon, further changes will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now more than ever, the world connects to us, and our stories are heard in all the faraway nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and unfaithfulness to our audience. And we have come to the end of this news brief. From you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.